Welcome to the channel, where every story reveals a deeper truth. If you're watching this right now, take a moment, drop a comment below, and tell us where in the world you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this one moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A brand new story, one you won't want to miss, drops tomorrow. So turn on that notification bell and join us on this journey. Because here, every voice matters, and every story leaves a mark. They bullied her in front of everyone, but she was hiding a secret that no one expected. Alyssa Greene stepped off the school bus onto the sunlit sidewalk outside Austin High, her worn sneakers landing with a soft thud on the pavement. At 17, this was supposed to be her final year, just one more lap before the finish line. She wasn't here to make friends, start over, or stir any attention. All she wanted was a clean slate, a diploma in her hand, and a quiet exit. Nothing more. But even before she reached the front doors, she could feel it. The stares, the whispers, the silent calculations. She wasn't just the new girl. She was a black girl walking into a mostly white school in a small Texas town, and that changed things. Her backpack hung off one shoulder, heavy with books she didn't need yet and expectations she never asked for. She adjusted the strap, took a quiet breath, and stepped inside. The hallway buzzed with morning chatter and the familiar chaos of high school life. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking against the waxed floors, laughter bouncing off the walls. And yet, it felt distant, like she was walking through a world that hadn't made space for her. She kept her eyes forward, face unreadable. She knew the rules. She'd learned them at her last school in Detroit, and the one before that in Cincinnati. Rule 1, don't draw attention. Rule 2, never let them see you react. Rule 3, stay invisible long enough to survive. It had worked before, it would work again. That was her plan, until she crossed paths with Brooklyn Adams. Brooklyn wasn't just another senior. She was the senior, the one everyone watched, admired, feared. Blonde, polished, and poised like someone who'd never been told no. Brooklyn didn't walk through the school. She owned it. Her friends, Chloe and Maddie, trailed behind like loyal shadows, echoing her every move. But what caught Alyssa's eye wasn't Brooklyn's entourage. It was the two boys leaning against the lockers beside them. Jackson Adams, Brooklyn's older brother, stood over 6 feet tall with the kind of confidence only star quarterbacks carried. His smirk came easy, practiced. His eyes said he had nothing to prove. Next to him was Zayden, slim, sharp-tongued, the kind of guy who spoke just to hear himself talk. Alyssa had seen their type before, and she wanted nothing to do with it. Still, as she passed, she could feel Brooklyn's gaze lock onto her. It wasn't curiosity. It was calculation. Like a queen sizing up a threat before deciding whether to crush it or let it live. Alyssa didn't flinch. She didn't speed up. She just moved, quiet and composed, toward her locker, spinning the combination like it was any other morning. But inside, she knew this school was no different. And neither was Brooklyn. The face had changed, but the game was the same. And Alyssa? She wasn't playing. Not yet. Not unless they gave her no choice. By the end of the first day, Alyssa already knew. Brooklyn had made her choice. It started small. A glance too long, a whisper too loud. By lunch, the message was clear. Brooklyn Adams had found her next target. The lunchroom, buzzing with noise, seemed to shift when Alyssa walked in. Eyes followed her. Some curious, some amused. Most waiting. Alyssa took her tray, chose the farthest table in the corner, and sat alone. She kept her posture relaxed, her gaze steady. She opened her bottle of water and took a slow sip, never once looking up. She'd played this game before. Let them watch. Let them whisper. None of it mattered if you didn't give them a piece of yourself to grab onto. But Brooklyn wasn't just watching. She was preparing the stage. Across the cafeteria, Brooklyn strolled in like she always did. Center of gravity, queen of the court. Chloe and Maddie flanked her, and Jackson trailed a few steps behind, laughing at something Zayden had said. But when Brooklyn spotted Alyssa, her smile curled into something colder. She veered from her usual path and made a beeline for Alyssa's table. The noise in the cafeteria dropped, just enough for tension to slip in. "Well, well," Brooklyn said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Looks like the new girl thinks she's too good to say hi." Alyssa didn't look up. She took another bite of her sandwich. "Oh, she's shy," Chloe added, mockingly. "Or stuck up," Maddie chimed in, earning a few scattered laughs from nearby tables. Zayden leaned against the next table, tilting his head. "Maybe she doesn't speak English," he said with a crooked grin. That one hit. Laughter rippled through the cafeteria like a wave. Alyssa stayed still. She chewed her food slowly, her face unreadable. The silence around her wasn't weakness. It was unnerving. Brooklyn could feel it. This wasn't the reaction she expected. Then, Jackson stepped forward, towering beside Alyssa's table. "Or maybe," he said, grinning, "she's just slow." That word hung heavy. The laughter that followed wasn't as strong. It wavered, confused. Alyssa calmly set her fork down. She reached for her juice, lifted it, and that's when Brooklyn struck. With one quick flick of her fingers, she knocked the cup, spilling juice across Alyssa's tray and soaking her lunch. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Alyssa looked at the mess. Then, slowly, deliberately, she wiped her hand with a napkin, stood, and walked her tray to the trash. No shouting, no threats, just silence. The laughter behind her started again, but this time it was thinner, more nervous. Because when Alyssa glanced back just once, there was something in her eyes that didn't belong in high school. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear. It was patience. The kind of patience that waits, calculates, knows how and when to move. And for the first time, Brooklyn Adams felt it. That tiny crack in control, that itch of uncertainty. Something told her this girl wasn't like the others. By the next morning, the rules of Austin High had changed, and everyone could feel it. The whispers weren't about Brooklyn anymore. They were about her, the girl who didn't flinch, the one who stared down the queen and walked away without a scratch. Alyssa Greene had become more than a curiosity. She was a question no one could answer, and Brooklyn hated it. At first, she tried to laugh it off. "She's just pretending to be tough," she told Chloe and Maddie between classes. But even her voice didn't carry the same weight it used to. Even her shadows weren't laughing as loud. Brooklyn knew she needed to fix it, fast. Letting Alyssa walk away had been a mistake. The longer she let this moment stretch, the more power Alyssa seemed to gain. So by lunch, the plan was already in motion. The whispers spread like wildfire. After school, behind the gym, no teachers, no cameras. Everyone knew what that meant. Alyssa knew too. She could feel it the second she walked into the building. The way students looked at her, some with nervous admiration, others with excitement, and a few with pity. It was happening again, just like it had back in Detroit. Different faces, same setup. She had tried to avoid this, tried to stay quiet, invisible. But people like Brooklyn never understood silence. They mistook it for weakness, and Alyssa was done pretending. When the final bell rang, she didn't hesitate. She walked with quiet purpose through the hallways and out the back door of the school. The lot behind the gym stretched wide, cracked, asphalt glowing under the amber sky. A crowd had already gathered, at least 20 students standing in a loose circle, phones in hand, breath held, waiting for the show. Brooklyn stood at the center like she owned it. Chloe and Maddie were on her flanks. Jackson leaned casually nearby, 6'2" of cocky swagger. Zayden twirled a pen like it was a blade. Alyssa approached. Slowly, her expression unreadable. Brooklyn tilted her head. "Wow, you actually showed. I thought you'd just keep running like yesterday." Alyssa stopped a few feet away. Her voice was quiet, calm. "I wasn't running," Brooklyn scoffed. "Please, you didn't even try to stand up for yourself." Alyssa exhaled, almost like she was tired of the conversation. "You think spilling juice is a fight?" Brooklyn's smile faltered for just a second. "Oh, don't worry," she said, stepping closer. "I plan to make it a real one." But before she could move, Alyssa spoke again, softly, Steady. I'm here to warn you. Brooklyn blinked, caught, off guard. Warn me. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Even Jackson raised an eyebrow. Alyssa didn't flinch. You don't want to do this? The confidence in her voice wasn't loud. It was lethal. And for the first time, Brooklyn wasn't sure if she was the predator anymore, or the prey. Jackson Adams was the first to move. 1 second he was smirking, 6'2", all muscle, all arrogance, and the next, his fist was slicing through the air. He was fast, but not faster than Alyssa. She wasn't there anymore. Ain't I? One fluid step, she slipped inside his reach, her hand catching his wrist mid-swing. She turned, just once, and used his own momentum against him. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was precise, clinical. Jackson's back hit the pavement with a thunderous crack. The breath rushed from his lungs as the entire crowd gasped in one voice. Phones trembled, eyes went wide. He didn't get back up. Alyssa stepped back, her hands still loose at her sides, calm as a storm just before the thunder. Zayden froze. His confidence drained in an instant, but pride wouldn't let him back down. She got lucky, he spat, charging forward. She didn't even blink. Alyssa sidestepped his strike with surgical ease. One smooth spin behind him, a sharp wrist lock, and Zayden was on his knees, gritting his teeth in pain. She let go, not because she had to, but because she chose to. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, final, and that was when Brooklyn knew. She had lost control. Her brother was still. On the ground, wheezing, his ego crushed harder than his fall. Zayden clutched his arm like he wasn't sure if it still worked. Chloe and Maddie, frozen, speechless. Their eyes darted from the fallen boys to Alyssa like they were seeing her for the first time, and realizing she wasn't playing the same game. Alyssa looked at Brooklyn, not with anger, not with smugness, but with something even more dangerous. Disappointment. Her voice, when it came, was low, unshaken. Do you still think I was running? Brooklyn didn't answer. She couldn't, because for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say. She had built her world on fear, on control. But none of that worked on Alyssa. None of it mattered. The crowd, once her kingdom, wasn't looking at her anymore. They were staring at Alyssa, and it wasn't fear in their eyes, it was respect. Alyssa turned. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't celebrating. She didn't need to. Her message had been delivered. Her strength had been seen. But Brooklyn wasn't ready to let go. With one last burst of desperation, she lunged forward, her hand reaching for Alyssa's hair. A childish, frantic move. A mistake. Alyssa's hand snapped up, catching Brooklyn's wrist in midair. The grip was like steel, effortless. Brooklyn froze, completely at her mercy. Alyssa finally turned her head, her eyes locking onto Brooklyn's, with a weight that crushed every illusion she had ever built. You don't have any power over me, she said, her voice like a calm blade. And you never will. She let go. Brooklyn stumbled back, her chest heaving. Alyssa walked away. And this time, the silence wasn't just shock, it was respect, and it was hers. The next morning, Austin High felt different. The lockers still slammed. The announcements still crackled overhead, but the energy had shifted, like the air after a storm. It wasn't just the students who noticed. Even the teachers glanced around the halls with quiet curiosity, wondering what had changed. Brooklyn. Adams walked in, head held high, shoulders stiff, pretending like nothing had happened. But she could feel it. The stares weren't admiration anymore. They were observation. People were watching her, but not for the reasons she was used to. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. Alyssa Greene had turned the entire school on. Its head, and she didn't even have to try. Brooklyn slid into her usual spot in the cafeteria, her designer bag perfectly placed on the bench beside her. Chloe and Maddie sat quietly across from her, barely making eye contact. Jackson nursed a bruised ego and a sore back at the next table, while Zayden hadn't said a word since first period. Their laughter was gone, their swagger, evaporated. Brooklyn stabbed at her salad with a fork, forcing her hands to stay still. But inside, everything was shaking. She had spent years building her name, her image, her dominance. Now, in less than 48 hours, it was all unraveling. And the worst part? Alyssa didn't even seem to care. Across the cafeteria, Alyssa sat alone, just like before, calm, composed, eating in silence. But this time the silence was earned, owned. The respect in the room wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. People walked by and nodded. A few from the basketball team gave quiet fist bumps. Even girls who had never glanced her way before lingered near her table, hesitating, wondering if they should say something, if they were allowed. Alyssa didn't seek their attention. She just existed. And somehow, that was enough. Brooklyn hated it. Not just the loss, but the way Alyssa didn't even celebrate. She hadn't tried to replace Brooklyn. She hadn't claimed a crown. She had simply made Brooklyn's power irrelevant, and then walked away. But just when Brooklyn thought she could salvage some control, a shadow fell over her table. She looked up. Alyssa stood there, calm as ever. She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She just looked at Brooklyn, steady and still. "We're done," she said. Simple, final. Brooklyn felt the air leave her lungs. Dozens of eyes turned toward them. The cafeteria held its breath, and then Alyssa turned and walked away. No fanfare, no mic drop, just closure. And for the first time in her life, Brooklyn Adams had nothing. No control, no words, no audience. Behind her, she heard the whispers shift again. They weren't about her anymore. They were about the girl who didn't need revenge, didn't need applause. The girl who walked in quietly, dismantled everything, and walked out stronger. And Brooklyn knew, deep down, that no one feared her now. They pitied her, and that was worse. What would you have done in Alyssa's shoes? We've all seen it, the way power plays out in schools, in workplaces, even in everyday life. Sometimes the loudest people seem the strongest, until someone quiet shows what true strength really looks like. Now that you've watched Alyssa's story unfold, we want to hear from you. Have you ever stood up to someone who tried to control the room? Have you ever been underestimated, judged before you even had the chance to speak? Or maybe you've seen someone else rise quietly, with calm confidence, and shift the balance without throwing a single punch. Drop a comment below and share your experience. What part of Alyssa's story hit you the hardest? What would you say? To someone going through the same thing? Your words might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear, and if you made it to the end, thank you. We don't just tell stories here, we build community. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. Tomorrow's story, it just might be the one you've been waiting for. Let's keep the conversation going below. Your voice matters. Let it be heard.